The year is 2010, and in the North Hertfordshire towns of Letchworth and Baldock, a group of plucky students are travelling back in time to discover the roles their schools played during World War II.
Well, you knew about side like Hitler and the Holocaust and everything like that, but you didn't know how it affected small towns
and locally.
Yeah.
It's just about
you didn't feel what the people feel, but you do now because you've read about them and you can put a face to a name kind of.
It was always Germany, England, not Baldock.
For Knights Templar School, then named Baldock Secondary, September 1939 marked more than just the beginning of the war.
The school opened pretty much very near the date that World War II started, and we were thinking about what might have occurred.
With the outbreak of war in Europe, Headmaster Frank Hancock faced the tough decision of whether or not to open the school as planned.
They had a debate to whether or not to buy a telephone for the new school, and that was funny because it's kind of something you don't think about. You just think it's always there.
Right, we need to make a decision. There's a war on and there's a school that hasn't been opened. What do you think about opening the school?
I think we should open the school, but I believe that we need some kind of telecommunications, such as a telephone.
I'll look into purchasing a telephone.
Well, Headmaster, we know we need to help with the war effort. Should we not turn the field over to an allotment patch?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yes, the boys will do that.
So, it's agreed, we'll open the school.
We found out about this K block, which is the original part of the school that was used in World War II, and we found out which parts were original. I think the school's old basement, which is now used for the D.V. cupboard, to keep all the equipment in, might have been used as an air raid shelter in World War II.
As the siren sounded, pupils hurried along to the shelter.
I guess the air raids could have gone off at any time, so they were really paranoid, I guess, as to what could happen, as to when it could happen as well.
It must have been really scary for them, if there was an air raid or something, having to leave the building and everything like that.
We found out that they doubled up parts of the school and other places for youth groups, for impromptu youth groups, for the evacuees.
Like so many other towns and villages, Letchworth and Baldock became the wartime home to evacuees. Valerie Burdett was one of them.
We didn't come the first year of the war. We came in 1940. I came from Sussex, which was near the seaside, so it was an obvious target for across the channel, you see. And so I suppose they went through the local council asking which families would like to go. I think they wanted children mostly, but in my case, my mother and my brother and cousin came with me, and we were just shepherded onto trains, and which took an awful long time to get from Sussex to Letchworth, and with our labels, with our name on, and a gas mask case.
Valerie's mother's first impressions of Letchworth weren't entirely favourable.
When we got to Letchworth, the first words she said as we got out the train and went along East Street, "God, this must be the coldest place on earth." It was very windy. We were dropped at Rushby Mead, which is in the centre of the town near the Howard Gardens. I suppose all the people from the train, and people around came out and said, "I'll have those people," or "I'll have that little girl," or whatever. And as my mother had myself and my brother and a cousin who was only about 3, therefore there were 4 people to house, which was difficult. But so we were almost left to the last because my mother wouldn't be split up from me. I think I was 7, and my cousin, as I say, 3. But my brother was billeted. He was taken off somewhere. We didn't know when my brother was for about a week. In actual fact, he was only about 6 doors away, but we didn't know. We were lucky because I had my mother, but a lot of children didn't have anybody with them. But it was like the unknown. They had no idea where they were going. I know a few of them were very unhappy.
But the newly arrived evacuees weren't the only ones who were unhappy.
I just can't believe all these evacuees are coming to our school.
Well, there is a war on,
I know there's a war on, Sophie. But I mean, we just got this school and all these Londoners are coming in to take it away.
Local people went on Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and the evacuees went Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday.
Students at Bulldog Secondary School had to quickly get used to sharing and making do, as did Desmond Ricks at Letchworth Grammar School, now Fernhill.
On the Monday morning we went in to find that half the school had been given up to these girls from Bexhill, so that meant drastic changes. We no longer had access to the housecraft room, we no longer had access to half of the classrooms. The hall and gym, that had to be allocated to them and to us, and timetables rearranged and all this sort of thing. The girls used to go in on the left gate and the boys went in on the right gate, but that stopped. We all had to go in the one gate because the Bexhill school went on the other side, because that was their side of the school. Well, we were not allowed really to fraternise with them. You know, there was a sort of the corridor that went right through the middle of the school, up and down. There's a corridor up and a corridor down. There was a barrier put there, so you didn't go beyond the barrier. After all, you could see them outside. Nobody could stop that. But as far as the school went, they were separate schools.
Although Letchworth survived the war unscathed from Germany's bombs, it did have one or two notable close shaves.
One day in September of 1940, I heard a noise above, and I looked up, and there was a German aircraft. I knew it was a German aircraft because it had the Iron Cross on its side, hovering over the poplar trees that used to be where the Broadway Gardens are now, surrounded by poplar trees, hovering, and I thought, oh dear, is he going to machine gun me or what? But he didn't. He passed over, flew over Spirella and disappeared. And it was a near go, wasn't it?
Not all of Letchworth Grammar School's alumni were as fortunate, as a document still on display today at Fernhill School bears testimony. One such hero was Ronald Fletch, whose sister-in-law Joan spoke to us alongside Ronald's great-nephew Ben, himself a pupil at Fernhill.
So an extrovert. He was people that I've known, and they all said what a lovely person he was. He was always outgoing, an outgoing person. He lived for his playing his sports. He was a good sport person, you know. I think he always wanted to go into the Air Force. He was one of these lads that are patriotic, wanted to do his part for the country. He was in a Wellington bomber dropping supplies to the partisans in Yugoslavia, and they crashed into a mountain, as far as I know, and the whole crew were killed. And he was only 22. Always a jolly person, different to my husband. My husband was a very quiet person, but Ronald was the other way round. They were very close to each other. Though there was 5 years different, but they were very close to one another, you know. And he was very devastated when his brother died. I think he would have been a very great sportsman if he'd have lived, you know, and a very nice person. That's a very nice tribute to him, and I think you've got him there to a T.
It was quite surreal at first, thinking that these people went to our school and they were so important. I do feel quite lucky that I'm not in the time where people's friends and boyfriends and partners and things were taken away and put into the war.
I was surprised that people were willing to tell their stories, because since we were kids, we've been told that it was a terrible time and stuff, and you wouldn't think people would talk about it. You'd think people would be too upset, or they've tried to block it from their memory. But a lot of people have been willing to share their stories with us, and it's been really interesting.
We've uncovered a lot of history that we didn't know was there. I guess it personalised the whole World War II sort of story.
Yeah.
It made it, because you read about it in a textbook and it's just there.
It makes you feel more emotional about it.
Makes you feel differently about all the school.
And I'm quite proud of the people that did go, even though I didn't know them.
You're proud of them?
Yes, I am.